Hello and welcome to Couples Talk. I'm Jonathan Decker, licensed therapist.
I'm Alicia Decker, co-founder of Mended. We have CJ and Christina here with us today. We've had them on before to talk about adoption and blended families. That was amazing. We're going to be talking about some trauma, some sexual abuse, and the mental and emotional complications that go along with that today.
And Christina, you are brave enough and kind enough to be here today, to be vulnerable and to share your experiences because you've had some horrific shit that you've been through, right? I mean, you have, and you agreed to be here today out of hopes that what you've experienced and what you've done to move beyond and to build a life for yourself might be helpful to somebody else. So can we start with, as much as you feel comfortable, giving some context to what your experiences are?
Sure. I mean, it's unfortunately a lot of my journey, I guess you can say it's a journey, started when I was a teenager. Teenagers are stupid. And so hormones, you just nobody really knew what was happening at the time. Some stuff happened. That was probably the least traumatic of all of the events, but it kind of led into how I saw myself. Now, looking back, I see, my demeanor changed. I started wearing baggy clothes. I started wearing darker clothes. I was broody. I mean, everybody just was like, oh, you're just a teenager. But looking back on it, knowing myself, that was definitely where everything kind of changed for me.
When you say baggy clothes, was that because I don't want people fixating on my body? I don't want people to see me, or what was the baggy clothes?
Very much so. I was one of the girls that kind of developed early, and one of the fun games the boys used to play was to try to take your bra off at school.
Oh boy.
So they'd come up behind you and they'd try to unclasp your bra, and it was fun in games, and it was like, that's not fun for me. So I wore sports bras all the time, and I started wearing baggy clothes to avoid it. So
yeah.
It was just one of those things.
Alicia and I were talking in a previous video where statistically, as far as they say 1 in 4 women will be sexually assaulted in some way in her life. And Alicia says, in my experience, it's more like 9 out of 10. And that what we have is a lack of reporting issue. And obviously there's a whole spectrum of, as awful as that was, no one's going to say boys on the playground trying to remove your bra is as terrible as being raped or something like that, but it's all on a spectrum of my body's not my own, and people are disrespecting me, and people are objectifying me,
and I don't feel safe.
And I don't feel safe. Yeah, like that's all a common thread. So you said you were broody.
Yeah, I was really just not a very happy teenager, which isn't like me. I'm normally a very happy person. And unfortunately, like you said, it's not like boys will be boys or whatever people like to say. And unfortunately, that kind of mentality where I lived, kind of led into
which I think is bullshit, by the way. I do.
Well, everybody should be taught how to behave. It's
as a man, it's offensive to me, like the whole boys will be boys mentality, because I'm like, that's not true, and I've worked really hard to be a good person. I know you have too, so
it's not okay.
Don't be using these crap excuses.
It's true.
Sorry, I'm not trying to
no, it's fine.
interrupt you. I'm just you hit a nerve, and I'm like, where's my soapbox? So go ahead.
But yeah, no, that led into things that were kind of they thought were more appropriate because of that mindset, inappropriate because of that mindset. So one of the boys, he told me that he was going to do whatever he wanted with me unless I could fight him off. Luckily, I was a pretty tough girl and I was able to fight him off. Yeah. But it kind of led into the whole mentality of who am I? What's my worth? Am I good enough for anybody else? Because especially where I lived, nobody believed me. I lost all my friends because I told them what happened. And they're like, oh, no, that wouldn't happen. So
you become a troublemaker instead of somebody who needs support.
Right. So it was just it just led into a lot of depression and just me being like, what am I really worthy of anything more than that? And so that led into a lot of interesting behaviors because I feel like at least for me, I felt like I was constantly looking for validation in that way, in a sexual way. And so I had a lot of boyfriends in college that I could find those needs in attempts, I think, to make myself feel like my body was my own. It was my choice because it's my choice, right?
Right.
You were choosing it.
Yeah, it was instead of somebody taking this from me or trying to take it from me, this was my choice. Which, it just led to more feelings. It just wasn't.
It became cyclical.
Yeah, it just wasn't. It was constantly moving from one person to another. I mean, it wasn't a lot. I shouldn't, but you know what I mean. It was just not.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of boyfriends. Not all of them were sexual, but you know, I was still trying to find that kind of something or someone to kind of fill that hole. I met him in college. And he kind of filled that hole. I wasn't ready for it because I was still brooding, and I went and left off to the military.
So when you say fill that hole, as in he just treated you like a person and treated you with respect.
He treated me how I saw my dad treat my mom.
Yeah.
And it's not something I felt like I was deserving of. And then, you know, he comes along and he's just like, you're the best, and, you know, praises me all the time. And even now, and I'm like, I don't know what to do with this, you know?
So you say I wasn't ready for it. So at the time, like, CJ was good to you, and you're like, yeah, I'm not.
I just wasn't ready. I was falling for him, and I wasn't ready to I don't know if I was just holding on to that anger or that feeling, but I just wasn't ready to move on to the next level of the healing process.
Right.
I wasn't even really sure what was happening,
Well,
honestly.
and don't let me project, because if I'm
Maybe.
wrong, tell me I'm wrong. But like, I imagine maybe there's a bit of imposter syndrome there. Like, you didn't believe you were worthy of it. So if he's showing you love, it's like, well, if he actually knew me, he wouldn't feel that way. And I can't let him get too close. I mean, am I wrong? It's okay if I'm wrong.
Partially. I mean, he was, because I was suicidal at some points.
Yeah.
And he was somebody I was like, hey, I'm feeling this way. And he'd be like, I'm there. And he'd show up and he was like, hey, let's go do something. And I was like, oh, okay, I don't know what to do with this. And so it was kind of, that's how he's always been, you know, so he's always been really good, because he's always made me face those emotions for what they were, and to see them for what they were, and, you know, what things were for what they were. So I couldn't hide anymore. And he was
Put them into context.
yeah. So he was like, no, this is what the reality is of what you went through. And I'm just like, no, I don't want to deal with that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to run away off to the military.
Yeah.
Which, you know, unfortunately led to another incident where which was probably, well, it's hard to say because everybody has their own perspectives, but it was the more violent of the things that I went through, where it was a guy who, it was a friend. He was somebody, like, when you go in and you get to your first base, you go through kind of like, after basic training, you're kind of brainwashed almost. I don't want to say brainwashed, but you're just kind of...
They break you down.
They do. And so when you first get to your new base, they get you in with all the other people that are brand new to the base and out of basic training. And they say, hey, we're going to kind of reintegrate you back into the real world-ish. So this boy was one of the people that I knew and he was friends with. I was friends with him and a couple of other people in that group. And they... and my ex at the time, because I was married, or my then husband. Ex now, then husband. He was deployed. And so he was like, yeah, I'm glad that you have friends and that's great. But he was also very encouraging. That kind of delves into the marital abuse, spousal abuse stuff. But he was also very encouraging of me to get drunk or to wear inappropriate clothing because I was his porn star. And so he liked to see me that way. And he didn't really care when or where.
If other guys were...
Yeah, he thought it was a compliment for him.
For other guys to lust after you, basically.
Yes. And so, you know, and the night the event happened, though, with my friend, we were at his dorm room, and everybody was drinking. And I didn't even have that much. And so I'm pretty sure we were never able to figure it out that I was drugged. Because I don't remember much. Yeah. It's all kind of like, it was really
And you
weird.
didn't get yourself there.
No.
Yeah.
And I would have remembered that, at least. But we were playing video games, and everybody else left, and I really wasn't sure what was happening. And the next thing I know, this guy's on top of me, choking me, and I'm passing out. Because he was choking me so hard. And, I mean, I literally thought I was going to die that night. Sorry.
Nothing to apologize for.
You know, and the hard part with that one was I woke up the next morning and I left. I realized what happened and I booked it out of there as fast as I could. Went back to my dorm room and I was, you know, took a shower and I tried to get myself clean and then the only thing that came through my mind is, oh no, I just cheated on my husband. And so I called him and I was like, hey, this happened. And he was like, no, that's not what happened. And I was like, are you sure? And so I went to somebody else. I went to my supervisor at the time and I was like, hey, this happened. And she was like, oh, hell no.
Well, they just don't want to deal with it.
No, well, they were supporting me. They said, no, you didn't cheat on your husband.
Oh.
you were raped, like you were assaulted. And I was like, I don't want to deal with that. But the military, they take a very serious stance on that stuff. And they were like, no.
Well, they do now more so than
Yeah, they were like, no, this happened. We're going to go to get everything taken care of. And so they took me to the hospital and we got like a rape kit done and all this other stuff. And they started like a court, they filed a report with JAG, which is like the military version of court system.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I got a lawyer and all this stuff, and we made contact with his supervisor. My mom came out like immediately to stay with me because I couldn't be on base anymore. They were like, "Nope, we're getting you out of here." But nothing ever really came of it because they were like, "Well, you contacted him afterwards." Or he contacted me, and I had texted him back, and he'd shown up in my dorm room the day after. And I was like so in shock / afraid of this guy that I had no idea. I
still couldn't believe really what happened.
Yeah, I was
So you
still kind of
wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know how to
Hindsight's
react.
2020, but she didn't really know exactly.
Well, and there's this. I mean, this was the least of your concerns at the time, but there's this huge shift in. This is someone who's my friend who I trust, and now this is someone who could do
It's
this.
like, did this really happen? Like,
And
but
then,
and that's the first thing I actually asked him. I was like, "Did this happen?" He's like, "Yes," and I was like,
He owned it just like that.
"Oh," and he was like, "But I thought that you wanted it." I was like, "I was not even really what, like, so choking somebody into unconsciousness is normal for you."
Yeah.
Anyway, and at that point, I was just like, "Okay, this really did happen, and now I'm gonna have to own up to this." But it kind of then.
Because
But the military didn't believe me.
Yeah, because of that communication, the military didn't really take it seriously. They kind of took the more, this wasn't as much, wasn't much rape, or this was more
You just made a
consensual than it was
stupid-
rape,
yeah.
or you made a mistake one night or whatever type thing.
So then that was kind of a hit to me. I was just like, okay, well maybe I'm just making this up. This whole like, maybe it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. Maybe, it wasn't.
Well, maybe there's part of you that wants to believe that because then you don't have to deal with all of this.
Yeah, I was all sorts of ready to just be like, I just cheated on my husband. Like, because to me that was the easier way out. To be like, I'd rather have a broken marriage than to have to deal with this. But what? do you say?
Well, I was going to say, in a way, a lot of some ways you're being gaslighted in that instance, just like your town was with the previous instance. So it's easier to believe.
Well, and that's
that.
part of the effects of trauma is to internalize it and say, it is my fault.
Yeah, that's true.
And if I'm the problem, then
Then I can fix it.
I can fix it, or I can go away, right?
I'm in control again.
Yeah.
That's true.
When it comes to overcoming this abuse and not staying stuck or even buried by it, what has helped you the most?
I had a really great support system. I didn't have a great therapist. I had the poor guy. I felt so bad for him. So that was kind of a downside too. He was a greenie, and I was the very first case he had, and he was like, I can't handle this. I'm having nightmares about your case, and I'm getting out of the military. And that was obviously a huge hit for me.
He quit after he heard
He quit.
what she went
He
through.
quit being a therapist.
Is it?
I know.
Whoa. Well, but like, what an awful thing on your end. Like, if you're already internalizing all this stuff, and then your therapist is like, "Yeah, this is too
I
much
quit.
for me."
This is
Like,
too heavy.
Yeah.
I'm out.
this
you're
whole
like-
thing that I dedicated my whole life to for the past few years, I met you, and now I'm done. Like, what the actual hell?
And you're
Yeah.
like, oh, well, I'll just keep it inside. I'll protect you because
Everybody else from this.
All of you therapists in embryo out there, if you can't handle the heat, don't even go near the kitchen. Like, don't even, because I'm sorry on behalf of.
It was, it's just how it is. And, but that
I don't say
taught
the F
me-
word very often. My first reaction to that was
WTF.
WTF, yeah.
But, I actually learned from that, though. I learned that I need to find the therapist that I can work with. So I learned that from him. I was like, I need to find someone. I mean, it took a little bit after, but I need to find somebody who can work with me the way I need. Not how they want, how I need.
Yeah.
And that was a big thing that I learned. Like I said, I had a huge support system. My family, my mom flew, because I was in Arizona, so she flew to Phoenix and then drove the 2 hours to Tucson.
Yeah.
And so we lived, and then she got us a hotel, and then we lived in a hotel until we could find somewhere to live.
Wow.
And that was, at least a month. Our favorite song was the Homeless song from Forgotten Carols. That's what we sang. Because we'd hop from hotel to hotel depending on how much they cost. And we'd sit there, homeless, as we're waiting, trying to figure out where we're going to go next. But, so, having the support of my family was a huge thing. The military was very supporting. I actually call him Papa Watson now because he's my very first supervisor. And I call him Papa Watson because he was like my father figure. Yeah. And he was so supportive. Like, he was such a huge help because I worked in a clinic. And so this guy had to come into the clinic. And so I'd be like, hey, he's coming in. And he'd be like, he was like way higher ranking than me, never had to check patients or anything. He was like, I got this. I'm going to go check your patients in. And you're going to sit in my office and try not to freak out. Okay. And I'm like, all right, got this. And
good call.
So, the support was great. And I had to learn really quick to lean on those people.
The principle that I would like to bring out of this, which is true for all of us who are experiencing challenging things, right? Because I do believe that like sexual abuse and sexual trauma is the most devastating. But to some degree, we all experience trauma in our life. And I loved what you said, Christina, even though you had that crappy situation with that therapist, after already going through something horrific, you said, but I learned from that. I learned that I needed to find the right fit for me. And that was huge, and that is something that each of us can do in our lives. Like, we can turn those obstacles, because that was an obstacle of someone you're reaching out for help and you weren't getting the help you needed. And to change that huge obstacle into an opportunity, and instead of dwelling on, that person not showing up for you, you said, this is what I learned from it. And that, I think that is a powerful tool in overcoming and in resilience and perseverance.
You're awesome. We want to thank you both for being here. This is the second part of a 3-part series with the Jacksons. The first part talks about adoption and blended families. We're going to continue delving into healing from sexual trauma. We are so grateful for your bravery and strength in being here talking about this today. I encourage you watching at home to check out the first video, get all caught up, and the next one is on its way pronto. If you enjoy what we're doing here with Mended Light, please like, subscribe, click the bell to get all of our future videos, get notified of all our future videos. And there's a lot of people who are suffering out there. So who do you know that could use this story and the lessons from it? Please pass it along. Until next time, keep your light shining because we need it.